The news that Michael Cohen will testify before a House committee next month has caused just an absolute media explosion from pundits who can't wait to hear from Donald Trump's former lawyer before he goes off to prison.
Spilling his guts, telling everything he knows about President Trump. Michael Cohen is going to testify publicly on television.
Cohen's decision to testify live and under oath has already prompted comparisons to former White House counsel John Dean, who broke ranks with President Nixon in '73.
As he stands in front of Congress, the very first question is, last time you were here, you lied to us.
Yeah.
So were you lying then or are you lying now?
Yeah.
Right. Where do you go from there?
Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Buck Sexton, a radio host, co-host of Hill TV, and a former CIA analyst. And Bill Press, host of the Bill Press and Friends podcast and a former CNN host. Buck, so the media, as we just saw, he's the new John Dean. He's going to tell everything he knows. It's a historic hearing. It's almost like they're imagining, rooting perhaps, that the president's former lawyer, after 2 guilty pleas, has some magic bullet that's going to bring the president down.
Well, if nothing else, they're excited that they can revisit all of the things that Cohen has already said. Cohen, who is a known...
You're talking about Stormy Daniels, right?
Cohen, who is a known and admitted fabricator, somebody who has lied multiple times on both sides of issues and all around different issues. And he's going to bring up the same things that we've heard largely in the past, which will then allow for the speculation Olympics that tends to go on around Russia collusion or around campaign payoffs, which is driving much of the news cycle, unfortunately, despite the fact that they never seem to actually get us to the point that they say they're going to take us to, where Trump actually did something illegal.
All right.
Just once, it would be interesting if they could get us there.
Well, here's where Conan's allies tell me they worry that expectations are getting out of control, because he's not going to tell everything he knows, as one of the anchors just said. He has made a decision that he's not going to get into anything involving the Mueller investigation. Mueller would oppose that, and he's been cooperating, and he says now he's come clean and he's telling the truth. And so there'll be nothing on Russian collusion, and I think this is going to be a letdown for a lot of journalists.
Well, first of all, I understand the buzz. I'm not necessarily part of it. But look, this is a guy who for 12 years was Donald Trump's personal attorney, his fixer, if you will, who arranged the Stormy Daniels payment and the Karen McDougal payment, who has talked, Buck is right, he's already talked about all of that.
So it'll be a spectacle, Bill.
It's a big deal. He's the centerpiece of the New York Attorney General investigation, the New York U.S. Attorney investigation, the Mueller investigation. It's a big deal to have him testify. But, you know, I worked for Jerry Brown. Jerry Brown's motto was, lower your expectations. And I think we all should.
And by the way, Lanny Davis, who's representing Michael Cohen, told me that his testimony will be personal, not partisan, that he's going to explain with shame and regret why he was complicit in some of what he calls the dirty deeds. And by the way, Michael Cohen is broke. His family's been under great emotional strain, and he views this, I think, as a chance to vindicate his reputation and explain the past. All right, let me move on now. We talked earlier in the program about the president's Oval Office address. So the day of the address, hours before, CNN's top White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, had this to say to Kellyanne Conway.
Can you promise that the president will tell the truth tonight? Will he tell the truth?
Yes, Jim, and can you promise that you will?
I'm not.
Am I allowed to mention God to you?
Problem like you do.
No, well, that, you know, Jim, I know that's a cheat. Make sure that goes viral.
Okay.
This is why, by the way, this is why I'm one of the only people around here who even gives you the time of day.
Can you guarantee?
And let me get back in your face, because you're such a smart ass most of the time, and I know you want this to go viral.
White House correspondent, not a commentator, saying, well, can you guarantee the president will tell the truth?
Bravo to Kellyanne Conway. Let me just say that Jim Acosta plays a very important role right now in our media discourse, and that is he makes it effectively impossible to continue this charade that you have certain networks, certainly certain newspapers, as objective, nonpartisan news sources. This is a joke. I mean, CNN, from an editorial perspective, not everybody there are good journalists there, just like everywhere else, but from a broad editorial perspective, CNN exists to launder liberalism for its audience. Essentially, the audience thinks that they're getting objective news. They want to believe that. They think they're just getting the facts. But when you see Acosta do something like this, not only is he not disciplined, he's effectively celebrated by the institution. That was just a cheap shot. It was an attack. It was meant to undermine a senior administration official.
Bill,
and it's a dirty bull.
You used to go to the White House briefings. Is it
No,
acceptable?
I still do.
Yeah,
I
okay,
still do. Here's the problem. They don't have any briefings anymore. Okay?
Because the president talks to journalists virtually every day. That's a side issue. My question is, if you are a correspondent for CNN, where you used to work, is that an acceptable tone to take with the president's counselor?
First of all, let me just say, I do not work for CNN. I'm not here to defend CNN, but I am here to defend, I will rather, defend Jim Acosta. I was on BBC the other night. The anchor asked me the question before the speech, is the president going to tell the truth tonight? I think it's a legitimate question when you have a president before the speech who said, Mexico's going to pay for the wall. 4 different presidents support the wall, which they don't. Thousands pour across the border every day, which they don't. They arrested 4,000 terrorists, which they didn't. That was a legitimate question.
If I can finish, fact-checking.
Here's my. I believe.
I have to wait until someone lies before to say that.
Wait, I want to make this point. I think Kellyanne Conway is very, very good. I think on that day she lost it. She was amateurish, and she should not have walked into his trap.
This is Jim Acosta's continuing version of asking the president, people in the White House, when did you stop beating your fill in the blank, wife, spouse, whoever it may be. He needs to stop doing this. He won't stop doing this. He's more famous and well-known than he's ever been, which is kind of a terrible commentary on the way that so-called journalists in this country operate.
I don't agree.
It is not the White House reporter's job to necessarily be liked by everybody. It's their job to ask tough questions.
If someone had done that to Barack Obama, will he lie tonight? You would have been sitting here going
questions out. Yelling a question at Barack Obama too aggressively was
you're right. I have gone to the briefings. Let me tell you. Go back to Sarah McClendon, Helen Thomas, Sam Donaldson. People were thorns in the side of the White House, and they just have to deal with it.
Well, I think you're conflating aggressive journalism with the journalism that assumes the president is lying before he even speaks. I want to talk about legitimate fact-checking. I don't have time to play the soundbite, but last weekend, Chris Wallace, Fox News Sunday, had Sarah Huckabee Sanders on and challenged her about the president's claim, the administration's claim that 4,000 known or suspected terrorists had come through the border illegally. And he said, no, those people were all picked up at airports. She sort of backed off. Kellyanne Conway went on TV a day or two later and said that Sarah Sanders had misspoken. My point is there's some legitimate fact-checking going on, not just at Fox, and it doesn't have to slide into name-calling.
This was a miss by the administration. This is, I mean, to Bill's point a moment ago, this is where the administration, I think, should get some heat from journalists, because there was some truth to the way that they proposed these facts initially, but it was misleading. That said, Kellyanne Conway corrected it, and there are a lot of complex issues that come into play when you're talking about the border and what actually qualifies as border security.
Let me just say, quick point, bravo, Chris Wallace. He did his homework. He called her out on it. I said also bravo to Andrew Napolitano, Fox and Friends, who has been more and more critical lately. Bravo to Shep Smith, who has been the same thing, went through the speech and said, here's what he got wrong. So that's good journalism. We ought to salute it.
I'll give them your address. They can send you flowers. Bill Press, Buck Sexton.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming by.